Please accept the recording. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this conference for the Virtual Saturday Research Academy. We have today Dr. Maria Alme, that is a Fulbright visiting scholar. And we have also Dr. Juana Ratia, who is going to present the activities for today. Please fill all the surveys that we are sharing using the screen, and I will put that link on the chat. Today, agenda is the welcome to participants that I am doing to do now. Please fill the participant survey. I will let everyone in. Still, we have people waiting on the waiting room. And thank you so much for being here. It is very important that you evaluate not only the conference, but also the quarter, the time that we have been giving you activities like meeting the mentors and having these workshops. And then I will let Dr. Aratia to present our conference for today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, good morning to everybody. And also Maria Alme, and Maria Sue. Maria Alme is in Norway. Maria Sue is in China. All right. And also we have students from South America. I saw somebody there, and also from Puerto Rico, and we have from Dominican Republic. Okay, Dr. Maria Alme, she was in Puerto Rico here in 2016. So I met her. She presented a beautiful presentation. The students were really interested. And now I contact her in Norway, where she is a professor, and she agreed to present us in that what's going on in the brain. Okay, so really, let's Maria Alme, thank you very much for being able to be with us today, and just the podium is yours for this international audience. Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Joanne and Elba and everyone else that come here today. And thank you so much for inviting me. I think I had to think approximately a half second when I got the question from Juan if I wanted to come to you and present. I was very happy for the invitation, so I immediately said yes. And I remember the visit in Puerto Rico 5 years ago. It was beautiful. And so, of course, I wish it would be a real visit, but a digital visit is, of course, also a bit simpler, easier. So I'm very happy that it's possible to talk and meet so far away and to be together. So I will today talk about the brain. What I do now, I am an associate professor at a university called Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, a long and terrible name, but we educate nurses and engineers and physiotherapists and occupational therapists and teachers and many. And my job there is to teach in physiology mainly. I have a background as a neuroscience researcher. And now I do a little bit of neuroscience, but not in the same way. Before I was in animals and cells and this, and now I work maybe more related to rehabilitation, but also I work quite a lot on education, how to build competence and how to make our healthcare system equity, or how to make equity in our healthcare system. So that is many interests there. But today I want to talk about the brain, and I think I will just simply share my screen with you. Let me see here. Now, hopefully, you see brain and the title. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. So yes, I made the title "Living and Learning with the Brain." So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the brain works and the fascinating stuff our brain can do, because I cannot stop being fascinated about our brains. I've been working with it for many years, and still it fascinates me a lot. And I will share some of that fascination with you really today. So from we wake up in the morning until we go to bed, and actually also when in bed, because our brain is actually quite active even if we sleep. When we are newborn, when we are old, when we study, as many of you do now, or just learning, when we are physically active. This guy here is a bit better than many of, at least than me, but we do a lot of things every day that everything we do actually involves our brain. And we don't think about it. I don't know if you maybe have a glass of water in front of you. I have one glass here, and even just reaching out for the glass, lifting it up, taking a sip and putting it back down again, is a quite complex activity for our brain. It's a lot of things going on. And from we are born, we train this ability to use our brain. And when we are social, it's a big part of the brain is active. And we're going to talk about some of these things now. So when we talk about our nervous system, we often divide it into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So the peripheral nervous system is the nerves that go up to my arms, down to my legs. Sorry for the beeping. And the central nervous system is our brain and our spinal cord. So if you take your hand on your back, you will feel this bumpy bones here, which is your spinal, or your spine. And inside, deep inside there is the spinal cord, and it consists of a lot of nerves going down from your brain and going up to your brain. So today I'm going to talk about the central nervous system. So what happens within the brain mainly. So the role of the central nervous system can be said very easily. And often I say to my students that the day you fully understand the role of the central nervous system, then you have understood the entire brain function. And I don't know if I understand it fully yet. I've been working on it for a long time, but it can be said very easily. So one way to say it is that the central nervous system, we just sometimes say CNS, it detects and it interprets signals that come from within the body and also outside the body. For example, when I touch the glass here, my hand could feel the glass, and the signal rushes into my brain, and my brain knows that I have come to the glass. So it detects the signals and it interprets the signals, and they use these signals to make a plan for how to deal with this incoming information. And I mean, it sounds quite easy, and it's not that complicated, but what happens inside the brain is very fascinating, and our brain does it superly. And all this interpretation is very dependent on our experience. So when we have nothing to compare with, we cannot really interpret well our input either. So while we are living, we are kind of collecting experiences so that we can interpret the world around us better. And that is kind of it's a super important role our brain has to make us interpret the world around us. And we say that our brain is plastic. And with that, we mean that it can change. Like you have what do you call it? Plastilina. I'm not sure if you say that, but when you make a little figure or something in the dough, it's plastic. And our brain is plastic nearly in the same way. We don't kind of squeeze it, but when we do something, our brain changes. And by being here today, I will tell you that your brain will not be the same after this talk as it was before the talk. And I will show you a bit later why I say that. It's not scary, so you can still stay. So if we look at our brain cortex, if you touch your head under here or whatever, there's bone to protect our brain. And just under, we come to the brain cortex, we call this. And as you see on this picture, it's kind of waves, And the reason of that is to make it bigger, because in here it's a lot of neurons, and to get enough space, instead of having a super big head, it kind of made it wavy so that it could fit better. And our brain cortex is responsible for detecting this incoming information, for example, touch or temperature. If I hold, now this glass was quite cold and I could sense that it was cold. If it was a cup of coffee, I would sense that it was warm. I mean, these are so natural things, we all know it, and I can detect sound. You hear my voice and what I say. I detect smell and light, for example. And this interpretation is also within the brain, or in the brain cortex. And it makes a plan. For example, when I took this glass again, I could feel that my hand touched it, and then my brain knew, okay, then I can use my biceps to lift it up. So, and all this happens, it's quite, I see the glass, I move my hand perfectly to the glass, I lift it up, and I take a sip and put it down again while I talk. And you maybe used to drink some coffee when you walk or when you write in lectures or anything. You can still do things at the same time, because the task and our brain is able also to make some automatic movements in a way. We're quite good at that. So how do we learn this, and what happens within the brain when we do this and learn this? And this is what we're going to talk a little bit about here. So one example I want to take is vision. So when I see something, I can tell immediately what it is. Now I can see outside, and it's snow here in Bergen today, so it's white, and I understand that that is snow. And if you try to think that you open your eyes for the first time, it's nearly impossible to think that, but try to imagine that you open your eyes for the first time, and what we see is nothing else than light waves. So the different light waves that hit our eyes gets detected by our brain. So here is, in this figure here, it's just the eyeball, and here goes the nerve, and this nerve consists of many nerve cells and nerve arms. The nerve endings have and these receptors, you can think of it as a keyhole and a key, and that you have to have the right key, and if you have the wrong key, it doesn't fit and the door doesn't open. And the same is with these receptors that are on the ending of all our nerves, that some will detect, for example, light waves, as does those in the eye. If I hold my hand up like this, my fingers doesn't detect any light wave. If I close my eyes, my fingers can't see anything. They cannot be used for that. But what my fingers can, they can feel that I touch something. So they have receptors for touch, for example, and temperature. And if something damages my fingers, it will also know that. So the light waves that hit the inner part of my eye, that will activate the nerve in the optic nerve, we say the visual nerve. And that sends an electric signal straight back to the back of our head. We see it here. We call it sometimes the occipital lobe. We can also say just the back of our head. And here in the downer part here, then this is detected. And that part of the brain simply says that, okay, incoming information. And one nerve, or part of the nerve, if you think of, electric wire, like I have one here, it consists of many, many small threads inside here. So this is the same with our nerves. This is kind of the optic nerve, and within those many, many, many small threads. And one will see one kind of light wave, and one will see another wave. And together they have kind of detected the different, it makes us understand it's colors or whatever. So everything goes in the back of our head. And then the back of our brain then is responsible for sending this information a little bit further up, still in this part that is lighting here. And that starts to interpret what this is. So I know when I look around now that there's a chair in front of me and there's snow outside, and I know what it is because I have experience with it. But the first time we open our eyes when we are born, our brain doesn't know anything about this. It's never seen before. It has never seen our mom or dad or a car or whatever. And the brain starts to learn what this means. And that always feels so fascinating because I cannot imagine not having the understanding of what I see. But this is something that we learn when we start learning it immediately after we are born. So this is when we think of the role then of the central nervous system to detect and then to interpret. And this interpretation actually takes quite a big space in the brain, and we use a lot of energy on this interpretation. Sometimes now I work with students who are going to be therapists in anything, either like physiotherapists, occupational therapists, and when they work with patients, I try to remind them that remember that how we act and how we behave is very much dependent on how we interpret things. And actually, it's important just for normal life, just for our friends and family. If we sometimes think that people maybe act strange, it might also be because they have interpreted the situation slightly different. And I'm sure that everyone has experienced that someone says something, and maybe I said, "Oh, this person said something terrible," and then another person hearing the exact same thing would say, "No, this wasn't terrible," because I'm kind of interpreting it based on my own experiences. Maybe I had experienced something else that day that made me put it in a different box. And that is sometimes, I think, important, that it can help us a little bit to understand why we can act so differently and maybe react differently to different things. So this was with the eyes. And this is where the vision and the understanding of vision comes. And for example, when I saw the glass, wanted to reach for it, it sent very quickly a message up to this part of my cortex where motor behavior more is decided. So when we are born and when we are living, our brain needs this learning of development. And we call it sometimes critical periods for development. And immediately after we're born, our brain need to learn how to interpret sensory information. For example, vision with the eyes, and also the touch. What does it mean when you're touched? What does this mean at all? And maybe after a while, when the kid takes the finger, it can start. It also understands how to grip in that's a reflex in the beginning, but this understanding of sensoric information is the first thing our brain learns. And that is probably because it's so important to get that information in and start to understanding it. And then a little bit after, and of course it doesn't completely stop, this is the most critical period. And what we mean with this critical period is that in this part of time, in these years or these months, our brain is especially plastic. It changes very easily. So our back of our brain much quicker learns to understand what the different light waves actually means. Later, it can also be learned. We don't stop to learn, but it might be a little bit harder, and it might inflict with other actions that we need to learn later. But a little bit later, we are super good in learning motor skills and also language. And maybe if you see a small toddler lying on the ground and maybe kind of reaching out for things, that is a beginning of training. Because when we train our motor skills, the brain needs to know exactly how big part of our muscles should be coupled or should be activated to do that specific task. And I will show you. But first I can maybe say, and I wrote it here, but you can say that it's not that we stop learning motor behavior. For example, maybe I can still try to do what you call it, the salto. Do you say that? Salto? Where you jump around. My son tried to teach me that. I can learn it. it won't be very good, but I can still learn it. So it doesn't stop. It stays on. It's just that this is a kind of critical period. If I don't learn motor behavior here, so movement, then I won't be so good in it later. So this is you've probably seen, and I also must say now that all pictures I've used, I've simply taken from internet. So just you know that. So if you see small kids, you see that they try to reach, how to manage to move, maybe how to grasp the pen. And this is training and training and training and training. And suddenly they start to understand, okay, how far do I have to stretch the hand? How much of the muscles do I need for maybe lifting something up to my mouth, for example? And this is long-term training. And for example, in this, if you see here, it's like this guy here is lifting, and when you lift something or use your muscle, here is the biceps, and the muscle, it's a big muscle, and it consists of many muscle cells, and they're kind of wrapped in to packages. And here is kind of one cell, and then you see there are many cells, and then there are even more cells. And one nerve is connected to one or many muscle cells. If I want to do something with that demands big power, I will use nerves that are coupled to big parts of the muscle. For example, I will give you an example. I don't know if you have breakfast yet, but maybe when you had breakfast, you had milk or juice. I am very happy of taking a glass of orange juice in the morning. And for example, this one. And if I see it, maybe I think it's full because I remember I bought a new one, so it must be full. And my brain, it gets ready to lift around 1 kilo. This is what's 1 kilo. So my brain activates enough neurons from the spinal cord to activate just exactly enough muscle cells in my biceps to lift 1 kilo. And I don't have to think about it, it just happens. But then, and you have maybe realized has happened to you too, that you take it and it was empty and you have used far too much power. And maybe if it's open, you have spilled it behind your back. So that is something we learn and there's a lot of motor learning, to learn exactly how to use enough of your muscles to make the movement you want to make perfectly how to say it, quick and use enough power for it. I'll just have to see if I want to be here. And a fascinating thing, I also have to borrow my son's weight here. I'm not sure if you'd see me or if you just see the presentation, but if you see. So if I want to start to train, and I use this weight, and I start to train like this guy here, and in the beginning, maybe after sometimes I feel that, yes, I'm getting stronger. I can actually lift more, but I'm not actually getting, in the beginning, I'm not actually getting stronger per se. My muscles haven't developed anything in the beginning, because the first thing I learn when I do something new, a new motor, or a new movement, is to use the muscles in a smart way. So my brain learns exactly, okay, how big part of my biceps should be activated to manage to lift this as I want. And the fascinating thing there, and that I remember when I heard it first, I didn't believe it, but it's supposed to be true. If I had lifted this for say 10 weeks, and I felt I get stronger, but I didn't lift this one, actually this arm would be a bit better too, because my brain would take the learning from using the muscle in my right arm in a proper way. It will transfer that knowledge to my left arm. So when I lifted that, it wouldn't be as good as the right one, but it would be better than it was before, because my brain could understand how to use the muscle better. And that I always find very, very strange and fascinating. But it's so when we learn, when we do some motoric movement or anything, the first part is really to learn exactly how to use the muscles. And then if we go back to the glass, the very very complex way of lifting perfectly up. And we don't think about it as long as it works. But if suddenly one day it doesn't work, that we don't, for example, if we cannot feel our fingers, then we don't know when to squeeze. We don't understand how hard to squeeze. You've probably experienced that your foot falls asleep, as we call it, if a nerve is a little bit inhibited and you have a sleeping foot, you maybe fallen. And it's not because you cannot use the muscles, it's simply that your brain doesn't get input on when you hit the ground, so it doesn't contract your muscles, so you end up falling maybe. And that's also a very complex activity from the brain. So if we look at the brain cortex again, different parts of the brain have different responsibility for our tasks. And for example, as we started to talk about, the back of our head is responsible for our vision. So the downer part here takes in the information, and the upper part interprets all the information. And then if we go a little bit further up here, it's important, and it's inside here, it's important for our touch. So when I touch something, the information goes very quickly, zoom in my hands, up my spinal cord. It goes through an area within here called thalamus, which just understand what this is and sends it out to the cortex. And also here, this part takes it in, the smaller part, and a large part behind here, I'm very sorry about the beeping, it's my washing machine that shouts to me that it's done, but it can shout. This part, it will interpret what this is. Okay, it feels, I've touched this before, I think it must be a glass. Of course, my eyes help also here. And then if we go a little bit further in front, so this is the front, so here would the eyes be. This is movement. So, and this is also divided into actually, so here, this region here, the thinner region, that sends out the signal. When I want to move my hand to lift the glass, that sends out the final signal. And this part here, let me see, there's my arrow. I hope you see my arrow. If not, I will try to explain. So the bigger part of the movement area, that makes me do complex movements. For example, if I see a ball, someone throws a ball to me and I catch it, then it helps me to combine the movement in my hand with what incoming information from the eyes. And then you can start already think here, how much back and forth. If you think then eyes are here, the eyes see the balls or the ball, information goes shoof, behind here, it's interpreted, oh, this ball is coming towards me, quickly, lift your hand. And this one area here says, okay, I want to lift exactly up there. You should lift so many of the muscle fibers up to the degree of blah, blah, blah. And then this part of the brain actually lifts and grabs the ball. Or not, it's your head if not. And such an easy thing that we do, someone throwing something at you and you take it, already that is quite a lot of information going on inside here. And also this frontal part of the movement area allows me to use tools, for example, a pen, so I can understand how do my fingers have to move to use the pen, or a hammer, or a whatever kind of tool we use. This frontal part here, this is very important for more maybe our cognitive parts. For example, as it says, attention and planning, and also for us to understand our roles. For example, I'm a teacher, I have one role as a teacher, and I'm a mom, and I have a role as that, I'm a friend, and whatever. And this part of the brain, if you remember from the previous slide, there were 3 waves, first a sensoric, and then a motoric, and then a cognitive area. And this part of the brain is the part of the brain that is fully developed latest. And what they say now is that around 25 years, maybe, then we are maturating also in this area. Then we are kind of using this fully. But of course, although we say that this is then it's mature, we always learn new, and we can always be better in it. But it's kind of maturing later, and that can also be important to remember that a full understanding of consequences and roles and things might not come before we are quite adult, actually. Of course, there are big differences here, personal differences and our individual differences, but they come at the latest point. And here we have a small area for speech that I can actually use the muscles in my mouth and cheeks and tongue to make words. And here a little bit further away, so they have to send a little bit distant signal here. It's about understanding. So if I when I speak now, it's actually only also auditory waves. Or hearing waves that goes into the ear and into the cochlea, and that activates nerves that go out here, and it can interpret it. If I spoke now, if I start to speak Norwegian, for example, hvis jeg snakker litt norsk til dere nå, så skjønner dere ingenting. Unless there's someone understanding Norwegian, you didn't understand anything of that. That is because your area here has never learned it. It has never understood or learned that those combinations of activating the brain means something. And same for me with I only speak Norwegian and English. I tried to learn Spanish once, and I knew a little bit Spanish, but then I forgot it. And I'm also trying to learn Dutch, actually, but it goes slow. I'm too old to manage to learn a language quickly now. But then it's this area here, and also maybe a bit more here, actually, even if it doesn't say, it's actually also here. So fascinating that our brain, I think, is so divided into roles. It plays roles, and for me now, working with coming therapists, that is something we talk a lot about, because if they work with someone that has maybe had an accident, fallen and hit their head and damaged the head in some ways, it might in fact affect some functions, but not others. Something could work perfectly fine, but something else could be difficult. So that, I think, it's okay to remember. And this one, this purple, I think purple or blue, is what we call the cerebellum. It's down here under our visual cortex, and that's very important for our movement and coordination also. So it works very closely with this area that send information, and also it makes us stable a little bit. If after a couple of beers, the reason why we can be a bit dizzy if someone do that, it's the cerebellum who is heavily affected by that. And also, when we learn something new, for example, if I learn to take I'm not sure if it's called salto or run jump, then it's my cerebellum who remember how I should do it. So this is I think, our fascinating brain, and how it can actually work in all we do. So I told you that after this talk, your brains will be changed. It's a pretty heavy thing to say in the morning. And I will show you what happens. I hope I'm not using too much time now, Johan. Stop me if.
Oh no, you can go on. You still have time. So
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Because this is quite interesting to hear, actually, why our brain is changed. And I can then ask, then you will probably guess the right thing, but can we see memory? If I took a look into your brains after this talk, could I see if you remembered what we talked about? And the funny answer to that is actually, in principle, yes. Practically, it would not be possible. I would not be allowed to take a look inside your brains. But in animals, we can see that. It's just very difficult to know where to look, though. That is the difficult thing. But in principle, we can, and I'll show you how. So, if you remember now what we talked about today, then it's because of your hippocampus. And the hippocampus is a little structure. It's very small. It's on both sides of your head. If if you kind of touch just over your ear, when you have your skull there, under there is the downer part of your brain. Of course, you can touch your brain, it's under the skull, but if you could kind of lift up the downer part of the brain, you would find two small structures on each side, very nicely protected by the cortex. And we call this the hippocampus. Now, I'm not sure if you can see what's written here since this is here, but let me move a bit. And the hippocampus got its, our hippocampus, it's responsible for learning and short-term memory. So it got its name. There. It got its name hippocampus. This is the first part, is the human hippocampus, this one that is lying here. And this one is the hippocampus, which is the seahorse. So that's why it got its name, because it looked so much on the sea, like a seahorse. And the hippocampus, when we learn something about, not motoric, because that is cerebellum, but if we learn a fact, for example, when I say that hippocampus got its name from the seahorse, that information goes to the hippocampus and it's saved there. And if you remember it tomorrow, it means that some cells within your hippocampus have changed to keep that memory. And if you still remember it in a year, maybe in 2 years, you tell it to someone, then that memory has traveled from a hippocampus and out probably to frontal part of your cortex where it's stored like a memory. And how do we do this? How do we learn and remember? What happens within our brains exactly? So if we think that we take a dive into our brain, we have a lot of cells. So there are neurons and many other cells that are lying around supporting, and the neurons are sending signals back and forth to each other between these brain regions that we talked about. And here is a beautiful picture I found, a guy called Thomas Bergen. This is a neuron, and now with the technology today, you can take beautiful pictures. So this is a cell body of a neuron, and here are the long arms that are receiving information. And maybe this is the axon that sends information. That's a bit hard to say, but and you see these small, we call it boutons, these small things here. Some are a bit choggy, or some are long and thin, and some are, yeah, they're a bit different. But these ones, these boutons, they can take in signal. So if the come at a neuron here with another bouton meeting this, the electrical, it will be actually chemical just on the synapse, but the signal could go and enter the cell. So when I said that envision the back of our head send signal a bit further up, that's what happens, that it's a signal from one neuron goes over to a different neuron. And when two of these boutons meet, we call it a synapse. And here, as you see, this neuron can make hundreds and hundreds of synapses, and probably thousands of synapses, so it can take in a lot of information from other cells. And here we just see another picture. We see them very well. And when we learn these change, that memory we store are stored within these boutons actually, and they're stored in the. Now we just see one here because it's one that is stained. But if another neuron came here and they made a contact here and sent a signal, if that signal was strong enough, this would grow in size. And that is actually where our memory is. That is very strange also. And we can look at it like here. Here is just a cell, and here is an illustration. It's just an illustration of one of these boutons. So you can think that this is a bouton from one cell and this from another one, and they create what we call a synapse. So the signal goes down here from the right, left, and sends chemicals over to the next cell. And if that happens enough, then this what we call postsynaptic side, the side that receives the signals, will actually be bigger. More proteins will be produced within here, and it will grow in size. And the effect of that is that next time a signal comes, then it goes a lot easier through. So then it's kind of more proteins and more cytoskeletons, which is inside here, to provide the signal to go a lot easier. And that is actually memory, that this is larger. And I've taken a picture of Donald Hebb here. He was a Canadian neuroscientist. And in 1949, he described this, and this is way before we had technical imaging devices as we have today. And actually for, how long is this? 70 years. A lot of neuroscientists have tried to understand if this really is so. And he was right all the time, even though he couldn't see it as we can today. He postulated it and explained why he thought so, and that's quite impressive. So I wanted to show him, because he's kind of the father of understanding this about learning, one of the fathers and mothers. There are many. So that is where memory is. And when we learn, we talked about that signals are sent to another part. When we then learn and we start to experience that, okay, when I move my hand here, it's very well, I can do this in a good way. We make we call it sometimes brain paths. So we make kind of easy paths within our brain to send signals so that we can do things a bit more effective. And I sometimes used to use the example of, if you go in the woods, I know they're beautiful woods. If you go there and no one has gone there before, it's difficult to walk. You get dirty on your shoes and it's hard to go, and you scratch your legs. And then if you know you're going to have to take that road many times, you start to step down things, and maybe one day you take a little axe and you hit away some things, and you get a little path. And maybe if they start to build houses, you want to make it a road or a big road. And that is what happens also inside our brain. The first times that we experience something, takes a little bit of time. It's kind of a bit of trouble to send that signal. But then the synapses are stronger when you have started to learn. So you can go faster, and then you make this motor roads, big roads inside your brain that makes you do things easily. That makes me lift my glass, even if I talk. I can even take my pen up. I can do many things at the same time because I have these paths in my brain. That's also quite fascinating, I think. So when we learn, and when you have been sitting here, listen now, what happened was that within your hippocampus, maybe this is a cell, let's say this is a cell in your hippocampus, and many boutons here, and this synapse became larger. So if I could have a super camera, taking it into your brain, into your hippocampus, I mean, I would never be allowed to do that, but if I could, I would see maybe that some of your synapses had been bigger. That helps you remember it. And they can be bigger because it affects our genes in that cells. I won't go into that how, but it affects how active our genes are. And this has allowed you to make paths in your brain that you can later walk easily. So when someone says hippocampus next time, you will, oh, it's about short-term memories, but brain, then the signals goes easier. And that is quite fascinating that this has happened on a Saturday in December. I hope it has happened. So that was what I wanted to say. Thank you so much. And I haven't seen if there are questions, but I will stop sharing. And let me see if I go out, because then I can see you. And then if you have any questions.
We have one question. Yes, we have one question on the chat.
In the chat.
I will open it.
Yes, on the chat. The person is asking, is that AI programmers using symbols to input orders or instructions for imitating or mime human behavior or thinking?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And I cannot answer that correctly. Let me think. So I think artificial intelligence wants to be able to do the same thing as our brain does.
Yes.
To kind of make the same type of connections that we do. But it's a very good question, because of course, but they have to, like we can experience and we can just tune our brain in everything we do. If I, for example, took way too mild, if I didn't hold hard enough, I would just lose the glass. And I know that for next time. But the AI programmer would have to then change the program, I think. But I think that is what they try to do, yeah. Oh, good question. Artificial intelligence is also very interesting, I think.
Yes, I believe, Maria, for both Maria, yeah, artificial intelligence try to make algorithms that we imitate how we think. But I'm not sure, you see, we are there yet in terms of doing, actual doing. So yeah, this has been coming from the 50s up to the 2000, okay? But the advances in that is not quite a big now. But with the advances we have in artificial intelligence, we can do a lot of stuff, all right? But going into the brain, it will be difficult, okay? Well, we will, I think this generation, and that's why we are teaching to the new generation, maybe they will develop, you see, the algorithm and the know-how, how to handle that part. Okay.
Yes, we have another question. Abraham is asking, wants to ask a question.
Yes.
Abraham?
Yeah, so I'm actually making an investigation based on helping students to make helping special education students to improve their cognitive skills. So the students that I'll be testing are with the condition of mild mental retardation, and I want to ask if the memory is related with that that condition, if there's a factor.
Yeah, I think do you mean with the mild with that condition, or yeah? So what we see if there are, sometimes there could be a problem. I'm not sure if I understood what you meant, but sometimes there could be a problem of actually detecting the incoming information. That could be one problem actually. So for example, we know that some with Down syndrome, for example, one of the problems could be that the signals that come from the outside, it doesn't go quick enough so that you don't have the same time of interpreting it. And then also the actions out become a bit different than if the signals came quicker. But also you can be right in, I think it depends on very much, but sometimes also it could be a problem in hippocampus that simply is reduced activity. And what we see in aging, in very old adults, then sometimes you can lose some of the cells in the hippocampus that can make you have the short-term memory a bit, or struggle more with the short-term memory. But did I actually answer what you said now? What you asked of?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. But it's a very interesting project.
Yeah, very interesting project.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your conference. We had about 34 participants today. I like how you related the task that we do every day and how the brain reacts to that. Can you give suggestions on how to improve a little bit the learning or a project that the students can do?
I think what I say to my students and what I think myself is that our brain needs to be trained as the rest of our body. If we don't use it, we lose it. So I always tell my students and my kids to play an instrument. If you don't play an instrument, start with a new instrument. It's terrible for your neighbors, but it's wonderful for your brain. So playing instruments, dancing, singing, and exercising, it doesn't have to be kind of super hard exercise, but walking, running, dancing, doing something, use the body. That's something really helps our brain. And actually, before learning, if now when we do digital things, take a walk in the morning or a little run, or at least run up and down the stairs a little bit, because it actually, all those endorphins and all those signals that come from that movement, they actually help us to remember. So if you feel tired and things are heavy to read and understand, take a break and do some movement. And instruments are super, because if we looked at how the brain sends signals, then you have to combine the hearing with the, maybe if it's a violin or a piano, combine with the movements, and it really exercises the brain. So use the brain as much as we think with the body. We have to, use it or lose it.
Thank you so much. I drop the conference feedback survey. If you want to fill it, please fill it, because we need that for our evaluation part of these conferences. And also, I dropped before other links that you need to fill, like 2 different surveys. We had more questions going on the chat. I want you, to be able to, to
have an
answer them.
interaction.
Yeah, you have another question? Yes, I think we
To have
can
an,
go. Yes.
and then kind of interaction, like questions and answers or discussion, something like that.
Yes, you can do it. You can actually ask the question and do it through the
chat.
or yes, you can
I would like to
ask the
know.
question right now.
I would like to
Yeah.
know what's the most advanced invention or discovery in the intelligence. Yeah, like intelligent drivers or intelligent medical workers, and any other like intelligent machines that can explore or the resources undersea or even to the space. I would like to know some information about this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how to answer that. Let me see. You mean for the brain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To add, like put a intelligent chip, and so those retarded people or disabled people can even, or can even
I see your question in the chat also.
Yeah.
As I know, I don't think that that exists, but there's a lot of research going on, at least to stop or reduce the effect of, for example, Alzheimer's, which are diseases where the brain kind of becomes worse. But no, so far I haven't heard about the intelligent chip. I mean, it's like what's the movie? The old movie where they put the chip into his head and he said, "Oh, I know kung fu."
Yeah.
It's no, I don't think it exists. And there's another question here I can just quickly answer. What is the influence of emotions on memory and the learning process? This is a very good question, and I didn't talk about that. But just in front of the hippocampus, there's a little piece in the brain called amygdala, which is very important for our emotions. And amygdala and hippocampus, they work very tight together. And that is the reason why when we think of a memory, we always have emotion linked to it. So for example, tomorrow when I think about today, I will think about excitement and joy, and we always put emotions to our memories. You can try to think about that and you will see that you do that. And also I think it very much in fact interferes with our frontal part of the brain that gives us the motivation. So if we are motivated, and that also they work together, these regions. So if we are motivated for something, then we also learn a lot easier. And how? I'm not sure. Maybe we don't inhibit the signal so much, but there is a very close relation. Let me see if there are more. Thank you, Patricia, for a nice comment. I can send a presentation to you, Anne, and if you would like to have it, it's a question if they can have access to the presentation, and for me that is fine. So I don't know, Johan, if you are okay by sharing.
Yes, Maria. Yes, we record
Yeah.
this
Oh, it's okay.
conversation, so it will be available
Yeah.
at the web page. Okay.
Yeah.
So everything we are saying it will be available. All right. Okay, Maria Alme, I
Yeah.
would like to comment in about what Maria is asking about the chips.
Yeah.
Well, actually, in California, there is a company funded by Elliot Musk, and
Uh-huh.
he's trying to do that. But I'm
Oh,
not too sure. You see what actually is going to put in the
yeah.
chip. Okay, if it's going to put some kind of algorithm or some kind of detection, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
It's not a public company yet, but they are just doing research. I think there is
Yeah.
a team, a very big team of neuroscience and computer people that are just trying to do something, but
Yeah.
it's in the beginning. So that's probably Maria was trying to get more insight in that area. Right?
Sorry, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Any other question? Yeah, because we do have another coming a talk that is, and the speaker is right here. Is part of the audience. He came just a few minutes ago. Oh, Maria, if there is no more questions, I really
Juan.
appreciate your talk. It's a beautiful talk. Hey, Maria.
Juan,
Yes.
I would like to have
yes.
another question about the students learning. Is there any case in Puerto Rico that you see the teachers use like intelligent machine or something to combine with the learners learning so that they can improve? And yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Juan would probably know. So I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I think Maria, we are going to talk
Well,
about that.
be-
Okay?
before we have the next presenter, I will tell the students to take a screenshot of the verification of attendance that we have been posting. I will change now it into another slide so we can do,
Okay.
Yeah,
space for the
Go
next.
ahead.
we would like to have
Going to put the next slide.
their faces.